Hello, today I'm going to count down my top 10 R.E.M. albums. I've been a big R.E.M. fan since high school. R.E.M. are Michael Stipe, vocals and lyrics, Peter Buck, guitar, Mike Mills, bass, Bill Berry, drums. But those are their formal stations. They have all played other instruments on their various recordings. So in my mind there are two R.E.M.s. There is the IRS R.E.M. and then there is the Warner R.E.M. The IRS R.E.M. were more country punk and they were the darlings of college radio. I remember listening on CJAM 91.5 FM from Windsor, Canada. I'm from Detroit, and back when I was in high school that was the place to get any kind of alternative music. My friends and I used to listen to this when we would drive around in our cars. This is way before the internet, or maybe we'd be doing our homework and put the station on, but I used to listen to it all the time. It was a big part of my teenage years in Detroit. But starting with the album Green in 1988, which was on Warner, R.E.M. became more pop-oriented at times, but not all the time. Some of their original sound shone through, but there were more silly songs, more guests, more chasing after mainstream radio play. At other times, there was this kind of desolate feeling, an expansive road atmosphere, which I liked, but I prefer the IRS years. But before we get into it, I want to give a shout out to one late era R.E.M. track. At My Most Beautiful is a standout from R.E.M.'s Up from 1998. It's gorgeous, sounds like they're channeling the Beach Boys or something. I also want to mention Dead Letter Office, one of my favorite albums of theirs. I'm not putting it on here because it's a collection, but I have lots of memories listening to this with my friends in high school, and I actually think it is the true R.E.M. This is the band I imagine playing small clubs, playing Velvet Underground covers, and just rocking. But with that out of the way, let's get started. At number 10, we have New Adventures in Hi-Fi from 1996, largely recorded on the road during the Monster Tour using mobile recording setups. This is the last album with drummer Bill Berry before he quit the band. One thing I want to mention about him first is that he is way more than a drummer. Yes, he's played drums, but he's played various other kinds of percussion, bass, guitar, piano, organ, and he also sings. So he was an integral part of the band. But during a 1995 concert in Switzerland, Berry collapsed on stage from a brain aneurysm. And this was a near-death experience, and it changed his outlook. He decided to leave. The other members tried to talk him out of it, but he wanted to do it, so they relented. And that's something to note, is that I always think first and foremost R.E.M. were friends, which you can't say about a lot of bands. And yes, they were upset about this, but they respected his wishes, which you have to commend. But New Adventures is sprawling. I see this as a work of exhaustion. It's about distance. There's a strange beauty here, and I'd say about half the songs. It's about urban decay. It feels spiritual, but more like a metaphysical drought or something. It embraces the fleeting and the desolate. I think this was their last gasp. It could have been a great album. It just misses the mark a little bit. And in many ways, I think Bill Berry saw the writing on the wall. There are some great tracks on here, How the West Was Won and Where It Got Us, Ebo, The Letter with Patti Smith. This is probably the best guest star that they ever had, I think. Unfortunately, these are the only two really great tracks on the album, and if you ask me, they should have ended it here. At number 9, Out of Time from 1991. This is the album that blew them up worldwide thanks to Losing My Religion, but they refused to tour behind it. And this is a strange album. There are songs I love: Low, Endgame, Belong, Half a World Away, Texarkana, Country Feedback. I like all those songs a lot. That's more than half the album. But then there are songs I hate. Radio Song, Shiny Happy People, Near Wild Heaven. I don't like any of those songs. And Losing My Religion was overplayed. It's kind of like R.E.M.'s Hotel California. It's a fine song, don't get me wrong, but it just ruined it for me. My least favorite song, though, has to be the KRS-One radio song. And this is nothing against rap. I do like rap. I will do some on this channel eventually. It doesn't fit with R.E.M. Not in my opinion. Despite this, the album won 3 Grammys. And when it came out, I was actually a little pissed off, to be honest. Because at that point, I had been a fan for many years. Since probably my second year in high school. I think I already graduated when this came out. I was like, what the hell is this? It was a giant departure from Green, which I think is a very, very solid album. And I don't think this one holds up very well, especially now. When I went back and listened to it for this list, I was kind of like, yeah, I don't know. It didn't age well. Number 8, we have Document from 1987. This is the first collaboration with producer Scott Litt. It's the last album on IRS. This is when they started getting more political, which they really nailed on Green. This album is pretty rockin', I have to say. I would maybe recommend this to someone wanting to get into them. I think it's a good middle ground. There are some highlights on here. Finest Work song, Welcome to the Occupation. It's the End of the World as We Know It. A bit overplayed also, but still a fine song. But I think the best ones on here are The One I Love and King of Birds. I remember thinking how cynical The One I Love was. On the surface, it sounds like a love song, but it's cold and detached, almost cruel. King of Birds sounds very Appalachian, and maybe it was one of their last great Southern songs. It's mournful. I love the dulcimer. I have a lot of memories tied to this one. I do love it. At number 7, we have Life's Rich Pageant from 1986. This album is a bridge. It leads from their enigmatic jangle rock to clarity and confidence. First thing I'm going to say is I love the title. I really like it. Michael Stipe's vocals became much clearer here than the previous albums. There are some fine songs on here. These Days and Hyena are almost punk. The Flowers of Guatemala, it's a nice ballad. Stipe's vocals are mesmerizing in this one, I think. The song I Believe could have been on Murmur or Reckoning. I adore Begin to Begin. I think it's one of their best rockers in their entire catalog. And I love Peter Buck's riff. It's so tough. It almost channels the Rolling Stones' Paint It Black. But the masterpieces on this one are Fall on Me, which had an awesome music video as well. This had some of Stipe's best lyrics, and I love the harmonies. Mike Mills' bridge is heavenly. Swan Swan H is almost Gordon Lightfoot. It sounds nautical and almost haunting. When I was in high school, I used to love Superman. It's just a fun tune. In fact, I think they have this subgenre of silly songs that they've always had. They pushed it too far without a time, but I think it is just the right balance here with Superman. I always like when Mike Mills takes the lead. I actually think he's an underrated vocalist. If you haven't heard their cover of the Troggs' Love Is All Around, you should check it out because it's one of Mike Mills' great lead vocals. But I would find the live versions, they're much better than the studio version, which was an outtake from New Adventures in Hi-Fi. At number 6, we have Green from 1988, first album for Warner Brother Records. They intentionally tried to write backwards, experimenting with unfamiliar instruments and styles, which is commendable for doing on a major label. It balances accessibility and complexity. I think they sound freer here in some ways, more confident. They're willing to let songs breathe in unconventional ways, and unlike previous albums, the band had more time in the studio. They took a more deliberate, layered approach to recording. There's brass, keyboards, and even mandolin on some tracks, which Peter Buck would utilize later on many other albums. There are some really great songs here. Pop Song 89, Get Up, Stand, which again is silly, but it kind of flirts with that edge, I think. Turn You Inside Out, the final track, Untitled. I love the harmonies and the organ. The masterpieces here are You Are the Everything. That mandolin is just sublime. Orange Crush, very surreal, political lyrics, love the drums. Peter Buck's riff almost sounds like it's the military. Not sure what I mean by that, but that's how I feel when I hear it. Love the video for this song. World Leader Pretend might be my favorite R.E.M. song, maybe. It's so heavy in subject matter and the way it's delivered, I think. The sparse, jangly arrangement keeps it urgent but not didactic. It doesn't feel preachy, which I think is very important if you're going to do political work. I love Mike Mills's backing vocals. I love the whispers, and the bottleneck slide solo is just awesome. The way that it transforms into the piano near the end is just stellar production. But all in all, I think this album feels open, experimental, and vibrant. Perhaps it's their peak as artists. At number 5, we have Fables of the Reconstruction from 1985. Maybe their darkest album, most enigmatic work for sure, recorded in London during a dark, rainy period that made the band miserable. Stipe called this their Southern Gothic record, and I think it sums it up very well. There's something a little folk horror going on here. There's a sense of mythic decay, Spanish moss, It feels like the ghosts of the Civil War are around. The early sessions were tense, apparently. The band almost broke up afterward. Producer Joe Boyd had worked with Nick Drake in Fairport Convention, and you can definitely tell there's this eerie pastoral tone, a lot of strings on this. Peter Buck's guitar is subdued, often serving the mood rather than his flashy riffs or jangly chords. Stipe's vocals are mostly buried in the mix. They're quite low, and he's almost whispering at times. There's a dreamlike, ghostly quality to all of it. It definitely feels like the uncanny. Some great tunes on here are Feeling Gravity's Pull, Life and How to Live It, but the best tracks are Maps and Legends. You can check out my video on the live version where I talk about that, but I love this track. Driver 8, perhaps the hit of the album. This song feels very, very R.E.M. to me. Maybe this is the song I'd play if I wanted to encapsulate them into one song. Maybe I would play this. I have an obsession with Can't Get There From Here. I used to love the video for this. This is silly, but it doesn't go over that edge that I spoke of. The last two tracks, Good Advices and Wendell G, make me sad, but I don't know why. They are just great songwriting, I guess. I love the banjo on Wendell G. It is brilliant. And number 4, we have the Chronic Town EP from 1982. Not an album, but I think it blows some of their true albums away. Maybe one of the best debuts ever, produced by Mitch Easter. This is much punkier. If you like punk, you're gonna like this a lot more. Aside from Fables of the Reconstruction, I think this is their most mysterious work. It is very post-punk, something like Wire or Gang of Four, filtered through Athens, Georgia, or filtered through the South. Perhaps there's also some New York television in here, the band Television. You could also say it's the Byrds meets the Velvet Underground, mixed with the Police in a honky-tonk. Feels very William Faulkner or Flannery O'Connor. This release has their best album cover, I think. The gargoyle sculpture is just instantly iconic, and it just tells you so much about the band. I think Gardening at Night is my favorite song on here. Stipe's wispy vocals, the heavy drums, that buried sitar that's in there. I love the melody, but I would say every track on here is gold. It is very tight. I think the delivery is urgent, compact, tough, electric. They had something to prove. I love the way the drums are recorded. They're very spacious. If I had only 20 minutes to prove how good of a band R.E.M. was, I would give someone this. And number 3, we have Automatic for the People from 1992. Maybe the band's darkest and most mature work, largely about death, aging, and loss. Now, this is dark in a different way than Fables of the Reconstruction. Fables has angst and frustration. This has acceptance and grace. The strings were arranged by John Paul Jones of Led Zeppelin. I think this is a far superior album than Out of Time, and I remember when it came out, I was actually happy because I was pretty disappointed with Out of Time. This redeemed them for me. I think most of the songs are solid. The weakest, I think, is probably Ignoreland. I just don't like that song that much. But Everybody Hurts, Drive, and Man on the Moon are classics. I love Sweetness Follows and Night Swimming, both amazing songs. But I think my favorite track is Find the River. It's spiritual, somber, yet uplifting. I love the disembodied backing vocals by Mike Mills that are deep in the mix. I would say all the songs have a sense of passage, of things changing. It's kind of ephemeral, and it's for sure their most mature work. At number 2, we have Murmur from 1983. This is their full-length debut, and it takes the atmosphere of Chronic Town and expands on it and increases the experimentation. It is known for its murky mix and cryptic lyrics. So during the recording, the band rejected the first producer. That was Stephen Hague. He had a polished commercial approach that they didn't think matched with their raw sound. He also added keyboard to the mix of Catapult without the band's permission, and they absolutely hated it. So they fired him and they chose Mitch Easter and Don Dixon instead, whose more hands-off natural production preserved the spontaneous, jangly energy the band wanted. I love every track on this album. There is some great punk-influenced work here. Radio Free Europe, Moral Kiosk, Catapult, those are all very punky songs. But some of the most creative are Laughing, has this awesome bass line and drums. Sitting Still, I love the jangly guitar and the sneering vocals by Stipe. 9-9 is such a weird song with some really crazy guitar work. It is very, very experimental. The bridge and the chorus are infectious and hummable. The best 3 tracks, I think, are Talk About the Passion, Perfect Circle, and Shaking Through. These 3 are so good. If I was to do a top 10 best R.E.M. songs video, which I might, these 3 would definitely be on it. Last but certainly not least, we have this baby. At number 1, we have Reckoning from 1984. I think this is a perfect album, faster, leaner, and more melodic than Murmur. This is the band finally finding its sound. People have stated some funny inconsistencies about the recording time. The studio diary listed 16 days, the album sleeve claimed 14 days, Buck stated 11 days, Dixon claims 20. Regardless, it was recorded live and fast, and it just works. It retains the punk origins of the EP and the debut, but embraces Southern Americana. I think it's impossible to pick favorites on here. The upbeat numbers, Harbor Coat, 7 Chinese Brothers, Pretty Persuasion, Second Guessing, Letter Never Sent, Little America, all of these are tight, melodic, and pure R.E.M. The ballad South Central Rain, I'm Sorry, was performed live on Letterman before the album came out. This may be their greatest song, or at least greatest ballad, and if you haven't seen the Letterman performance, it's quite good. Actually, a lot of their performances from this time, they went on many talk shows, late night shows. They are just on fire. Another ballad, Camera, is about them losing a friend to a car crash. It's pretty bleak, but powerful. You can hear the sadness in it. It's very potent. They wanted Stipe to do more takes of his vocals, but after a certain point he refused. It was just too difficult. Time After Time almost sounds Chinese influenced. I think this is where they really started going experimental in ways. Michael Stipe has said this is their road album. They had been living on the road for several years at that point, playing anywhere. Don't Go Back to Rockville exemplifies this notion. It's so twangy but great. And I think it really sums up their southernness, but also presents it to the masses in a way that is very digestible. Stipe also has claimed that the real title of this record is File Underwater. That's something he told NME in 1984. One more thing, if you haven't seen Left of Reckoning, it's a video that takes the left side of Reckoning and makes this crazy, almost stop motion video. It is really cool. If you haven't watched it, you should watch it. In the end, I think it's a crime that they refuse to get back together. I also saw that they have played together recently with Michael Shannon, so maybe that is the start of something new. I don't know. I understand they don't want to tarnish their legacy, but they still seem to have a good relationship, and I would love old man R.E.M, especially if they tapped more into their southern roots and they didn't focus so much on creating hits and the touring machine. You know, they just go into a studio and just do some stuff and then release that. I would love something along the lines of Johnny Cash's American recordings. Not covers per se, I mean they could do a few, but just that looseness and, you know, carrying the weight of their age maybe, I think would be very interesting to hear. I know they have it in them. Maybe there's enough demand for this. I don't know. Maybe they would change their minds. If you have anything to say about any of these albums or songs, you can comment below. I have a link for a playlist also below. I picked 2 songs from each album that I think are maybe the best. So that's all I got for this one. Take care. Have a good day.